People used to say, I'm just here for the food or something. I'm just here for the hand sanitizer.
That's right. That's right.
You need a couple of extras? I've got some hidden back behind the screen here.
Stashed.
Somebody told me that they were going to get a Windex bottle and fill it with blue Kool-Aid. And a straw would sit out on the town bench sipping.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead and put it in a Lysol jug.
I've got 6 o'clock. Everybody else? Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. I'll call us to order. And first item of business, Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Mayor Barbara McRae.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the next item is to adopt the agenda for tonight. And Diana wanted to bring up something about picking on the square, discuss a little bit about it. So if there's no objection, I'll enter that. It'll be the last thing, it'll be F probably on your agenda. Does that suit everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other additions or anything you want to make to the agenda for tonight?
Move to adopt as amended.
Okay. Second? All in favor? Okay, the next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions, comments about the consent agenda? Everybody good? All right, we'll have a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I so move.
Second? Second. Michael? Second. Second, okay. All right, all in favor? Okay. Public session, anybody, did we hear from anybody that wanted to speak at public session?
No, sir, we didn't. To my knowledge, as of today, we didn't receive anything.
I haven't heard, has anybody heard anything? So, okay. New business, presentation from the Classy Initiative, Mr. McCollum.
Good evening, Mayor Scott, council. And somewhere out there in radio land, or phone land, I'm assuming is Mr. Henning. Let's do this one first. And we'll
So is John checked on?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, let me offer, we had planned to do this entirely differently back in the fall, but tonight you just get me. In the not too distant future, I hope you'll get our new executive director and some of the other members of the board here. First of all, thank you on behalf of the other board members, our larger group, Mountain Partners, and all the people that we want to thank the town council for supporting us for the last 3 years to get us up and going. Excuse me, I almost choked on my method. I wasn't expecting to be on this early. So you have copies of the 4 documents I'm going to reference here tonight. The first one is Hello Franklin. This is a letter from our new executive director, Ms. Elaine Eisenbraun. She lives in Long Creek, Oregon. I tell you what, that's near, but it's not near anything. So I can't reference that. And I'll tell you more about her. But this is a letter written to council here and telling you how anxious she is to be here in Franklin. and we're anxious to have her here. She has been on board since April the 1st, but she's been working from home out there and making a lot of progress, familiarizing herself with landscape here in Franklin and learning all about what Niquosi has done up to this point, and she already had some good ideas for how to move us forward. Like I say, this had been planned much earlier, and we put it off for a couple of months in the winter, and then we all know why it's been put off the last 2 months here, but we are here now. And I wanted to give you a little update on what's going on. On the second document that you have there is our financial statement for the last 3 years. And I'm going to come back to one part in there, which is the town contribution last year. That's blank, only in dollars, because we want to acknowledge the transfer of the Niquosi Mound in there, and how that has a dollar value placed on it as far as tax evaluation. That's not a real number. The real value is just in the place itself. So insert that value, if you will, in there. We are going to be making another request tonight. The third document there is our budget request for tonight. We're well aware that municipal revenue is going to be severely impacted with all of the quarantines and shutdowns that are going on. We still want to put in a request. We weren't going to go back to the original amount that we decided between the county and the town, is to do 12.5 from each group. We're going to go back to that this year with the town, but under this situation, we realize we can't do that. We're asking for 5 from the town, and that has a lot more importance than dollar value, as I'll explain in a minute. The process of building a nonprofit from conceptual to fully functional is a long and winding road sometimes. And folks think maybe we're supposed to be moving a little faster than we are. We wanted to focus on being very methodical in how we built the foundation to make sure that the Niquosi initiative was successful going forward. So there was the Mountain Partners Group, okay? And from that, there was born the Niquosi initiative as a functioning body that could make this happen, an official, a formal group to take it forward. So we've been very slow in building the people and the resources and financial contributors, grantors, to help us build what we have in place now. Last year, transferring the deed to the Niquosi initiative put the last large piece of the foundation for the Niquosi initiative in place. When we go out now to compete for grants, especially under the economic situation that we're going to be looking at now, because I was working with the Coweeta School Arts and Heritage Center for the last few years, and when we started that, we were still in the recovery years for 2008, and so grant money was hard to come by, and we're going to be facing that again. But because of these pieces that we've put together over the last 3 years, and the final piece of having the deed transfer last year, that makes all the difference in the world. When we go out, we're going to be able to compete for money to bring in for the projects here. And that addition, you can't put a dollar amount on what that contributes to the Niquosi initiative as far as being able to build for the future. It accomplished several things. It helped build our foundation. It also brought the Cherokee and everybody in Macon County into the unit. Nobody was excluded. We just included more people. And we allowed the culture that we live next door to for the first time in 200 years to have access and a say-so, not access, but a say-so in the management and recognition of the mound. So the money amount that we asked for is just to keep, is a sign that the town and the county are still, they're still behind us. They're still confident of what we're doing, is mainly what that is for. And so we ask for your consideration on that. I've also listed there, I won't read them off, but we've got several of our accomplishments and ongoing projects there. They're not terribly visible, but they're going on. One of the main partnerships that we built is with the tribe. We're working with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources on acting in an advisory role for the development of the Hall Mountain property, which they purchased, which is next door to the Coweeta Mountain town site. And so the plan's there now, that's in the development stage. There's going to be an Eagle aviary a resting aviary for the disabled American bald eagles. And so there'll be education potential and visitation possibilities there. And there'll also be a trail system and outdoor classrooms are going to be on site there. We're also working with the chief's office to make sure, he wants to make sure that whatever is done in the Dan's Auto property down there, whatever form that takes, that it's compatible with the comprehensive plan, whatever that turns out to be and whatever the guidelines on there. We want to make sure that whatever's done there is compatible with the redevelopment that's going to take place in the East Franklin area there, which is referred to as the Niquosi Gateway area in the plan. So briefly, so this was y'all have probably seen this before, and I will hold this up for those watching. This is the original outline of the corridor area. It's very extensive. This is a Niquosi initiative. It's a regional nonprofit extending all the way from Dillard, Georgia, down here in the bottom of the map to the Qualla boundary up on the north end, and out towards Bryson City to the Coweeta site, which is just east of downtown Bryson City. I don't want to take up too much of your time here, but so this is the area that we're trying to cover here. It's pretty extensive, and that's one of the reasons for the slow progression of building Niquosi into what it is now. Now, if you haven't been down, we also got our first construction project under our belt last year. We learned a lot doing this, but we have our feet wet in that now. This is the Coweeta Town site kiosk, education kiosk, and there's an observation deck in the background. On that. If you haven't, this is 1 mile north of the County Baptist Church, right on the side of the road by the Little Tennessee River. This is our next project. This is what's going in, a replica of this without the observation deck in the background. We're ready to start construction on this. We've got a few details to work out. Everything that you see here above the concrete platform has already been manufactured and is stored and ready to put up. We ran into some timing issues on the Coweeta. We're not going to be doing that on this one. So we have everything ready to go. This is double-sided information boards here. Nice design there. So we're ready to go on that. Which brings me to our second request for the evening. The placement of the kiosk. We thought originally we'd put it on the corner, right where the road turns in at Dan's Auto building there. And then we realized there's nothing on the north side of the mountain. And when the old new bridge, the Henson Bridge, was built and the two southbound lanes of 441 business were put in, Franklin businessman Bob Sanders gave a small parcel of land to the town for the purpose of signage, advertising, historical marker, whatever. Let me say this, we're not interested in the deed, we're not asking for the deed for that property. What we are asking is that if we're able to put some on the north side, it would have to involve that parcel of land. And so what we're asking from the board here tonight is permission to utilize that little parcel of land. That's the last thing that you have there. I hope everybody got one. It shows, it's highlighted on the last page map there. It's 0.02 acres, 871 square feet. I sent a map to Mr. Henning several weeks back just to see if he would take a look and see if there were any right-of-way issues or encumbrances on that, and I don't know what he found on that. But we would like to utilize that piece of property for its intended purpose when Mr. Sanders gave it to the town. Since nothing has happened there since then, and we now have other development going on related to the mound, we would like permission to use that parcel for the installation of this kiosk. And with that, I'll try and field questions.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. McCollum.
So, a decision on that, whenever it's possible, that will kind of give us, then we can set a go date for construction. So, I thank y'all for your
Can I
time.
ask about one question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's the same one that came up about the Coweeta Heritage Center out there when it was first started, and I was aware of that. Do you have an estimate of time that it will take before the foundation can become self-sufficient and not have to depend on public funds?
I would say we're moving towards that very quickly. The request for public funds is not so much for sustaining us as it is a vote of confidence from local government. That we had a lady, by the way, funding for this is through the Cannon Foundation. Every penny for the design, construction, and installation of this is paid for by a grant from the Cannon Foundation. There's no local money. We don't have to recruit more local money for this. And we hope that's the way it goes on the next. We already have one in the planning stages for Cherokee to be putting down there. Now, to address your question, the lady from the Cannon Foundation was here. She wanted to go see this one. They sent people out to check up on how their grant money is being spent. And in talking with her, we stood down here by the Niquosi Mound. And when I told her who all was involved and how we have multi-governmental bodies, we have cross-cultural interests here, she said, they have never seen anything quite like this. She said, this is very unique. But when we see the level of interest here from all of these different entities, they all have some financial support in it. And then the actual transfer of the deed to this entity to hold, for everybody to be represented there. She said, you're in very well positioned to go out and recruit financing for your other projects in there. So local funding is not it's necessary as much as a vote of confidence as anything else, Mr.
Will the organization continue to have to rely on grants and contributions and so forth? Or do you have any way to generate any income for the foundation besides grants and so forth? Is that pretty much what the focus has to be?
Not right now. And I can't answer that because in this foundation building that I was talking about, we've got that foundation, but we also realize that we have reached a point where we have to have professional leadership, someone who focuses on this, all week. I mean, all the rest of us, everything that's been done up to this point is done by volunteers. But we have it to this stage, now we have to bring in somebody to take it and go with it. And that was in December. In November, we started advertising nationally for an executive director's position. We appointed an outside, not a review board, but a search committee. And they reviewed all of those, and we refined it down to 4 top candidates. We interviewed them here in Franklin, and Ms. Eisenbraun was a unanimous selection there. She has all of the qualifications that all of these people involved in the selection process think that we need. And so that will be part of her job coming here, is to where do we go now as far as revenue recruitment and building our financial future. Yeah.
So you really believe that it's a good calling card when you go and apply for grants, that the town and the county have a little investment with you?
Absolutely, absolutely. We know what some of the checklists are for the people that we apply to grants from, and that's one of the things that they look for on projects like this. I found that out from the school. Well, think about this. If you're going to grant money to someone and you have a standalone entity that comes to you and applies, they may have a little of their own money, they may have a little support from here and there, and then you have Niquosi is coming in, competing for those funds, and you've got 3 different governments represented. You've got one of the top conservation trusts in North America. Mainspring is here, they're a part of this. When they see all that and everyone's contributing, who do you think is going to get the grant? We're very well positioned to compete in what is going to be a very tough environment.
I'm a fan. I mean, I want to see that, but I do worry about that budget that we're about to see. I think it's going to be not great news. And also worried about fatigue over the Niquosi Mountain that we all experienced last year at this time. For this year's budget session, is it gonna hurt you guys or hurt anybody's feelings if just doing the land use as an in-kind town donation stood in for the $5,000, at least for this budgetary year?
We're all in agreement that if it's not possible, it's not possible, and we will understand and respect that. And in this climate, I don't think anybody that we're gonna be applying to is gonna, you've already made a tremendous contribution. Okay, so they know that the town of Franklin is heavily invested in this. So that's not gonna damage us, I don't believe. If that's-
In use of the land could act as
an like an in-kind contribution, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Okay, item B, presentation of on town of Franklin Water and Sewer Comp Plan. Have we got somebody online here?
So, Mr. Mayor, if we want, I'm gonna call in real quick, and
Okay.
that'll give Mr. McCollum a chance
Sure.
to exit. So that way we can bring in some of our staff as well to talk
Oh,
about
good.
this.
Let's
So while
do
we're
it.
doing that, I'm gonna make a phone call in, and Smashmer, if you don't mind, and we'll ask you to kind of keep it on speakerphone up there like we did last time,
Okay.
if that's okay.
When do we need to vote on use of this parcel? Do we need to vote on that?
That's entirely up to you. The sooner we know, the sooner we can make a decision on placement.
We may not be able to do budget, we can at least give a yes or no on use of the land for the sign, right?
It's,
That would be great.
but not tonight.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't think so, it's not on the.
I would wait until you heard from Mr. Henning, just to make sure that no encumbrances or issues there with that would be the last thing.
We can look at it at our June meeting.
Okay.
It's not like we use it for a lot of others.
Well, that's one reason we didn't feel too bad about asking for it. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Mike.
How do you rig that?
Have we got anything we could?
We could some sort of, maybe use this to prop it up.
Freddie, Jessica, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay.
I think we rigged it,
Thank you.
maybe like that. Is that working?
I'm glad we're not trying to put a man on the moon.
The other way, so the microphone's on that. There you go.
This way,
No, sideways. There you go.
that way.
It's as good as any. Justin learned his tech skills from the best.
Yeah. Can you still hear?
I can hear you. Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Yeah. We're good.
Great. Summer and Mayor, are we ready to begin?
We're ready, go
Yes,
right ahead.
ma'am.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. We are sorry that we were unable to be there in person. We certainly enjoy our time with the town of Franklin every time we get to be in your presence. So we apologize that the COVID crisis has gotten in between us, and we hope that this virtual presentation works just as effectively today. Now, I'm understanding that you guys are going to be advancing the slides on your end.
Yes.
So I will just ask you to do that as we go. And Summer, you want to also talk for a second about questions before we get started?
Yes, so as we move through this is going to be a little bit new for us, it's just the way we're having to visually do this. So if we could just hold all questions to the end of the presentation, that way we can move through it fairly quickly, because it is a lot of information to digest. And then if we'll just hold all questions to the end, please.
Thanks, Summer. All right, so if we could go to the first slide. Somebody going to advance on your end, Summer?
Yes, we're to the point where it has meet your team.
Okay, great. We just are, no, perfect. Now we can see it. Awesome. So on the phone with me today, we have several folks from the Withers Drive Now team. First of all, we have Seth Robertson. Seth joined our team a little over a year ago. Some of you may be familiar with Seth. He spent many, many years with DEQ and actually ran a division there overseeing grants and loans. And so Seth has been just a huge asset to join our team in the past year, and he now leads the funding and asset management team. And on his team, he also has Stephen Miller. Stephen is on the phone with us today. Stephen has been working with the town of Franklin probably off and on for more than 10 years on important financial and funding projects. We also have James Howe, who's a fairly recent addition. He's been with us close to 2 years now. James is a business student and also works on a lot of the funding and financial projects. And then many of you know Denny Martin. He also was instrumental at the beginning of this project and getting it kicked off. Denny is in semi-retirement at this point, but he still is involved with the project behind the scenes. And then also Freddie Carroll. Freddie is our Western Regional Representative for Withers, and he works with a lot of our clients in the West. So many of you have met Freddie in the past. He's on the call today as well. So thank you all. We just thought we'd pause a minute and let you know who was on the other end of the line, and we appreciate you making time for us in the council meeting today. If you will go ahead and move to the next slide, I'm going to actually turn the presentation over to Stephen Miller. Steve is he has been working in detail with these numbers and these financials for months now, and given that we're not there in person, we thought we would just streamline the communication and let Stephen talk to you about what the financials represent and what it's telling us about this project. So, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you, and once again, thank you all for having us today.
Thank you, Jessica. One of the primary objectives that we had for the study was to prioritize the town's 10-year capital improvement needs. That is, capital improvement needs over the next 10 years, kind of refreshing the information we had last reviewed several years ago and looking to see what those needs will be in the future. Also, we had prioritized those needs to see which ones are the utmost importance and which ones are not quite as important. And then we took those needs and developed a plan for funding each and every one of those. And in doing so, we attempted to balance out those needs along with considering the fiscal impact upon the ratepayers, or the way we're kind of smoothing out these expenditures over time so that every need is addressed, but also will minimize the impact upon the fund and the ratepayers. If we move on to slide number 5. Slide number 5, you can see we're basically showing some historical information, kind of big picture regarding the water and sewer program. You'll look at two different colored lines. One is a green line, one's an orange line. The green line represents the historical revenues for the water and sewer program, starting out back in 2016. And as per the audit, they were slightly over $3.5 million. So you'll see how that has risen over the 5-year period from 2016 up through 2020, this current year. It's projected to be slightly over $4 million. In turn, the orange line, the expenditures for the water and sewer program, have also risen from just under $3.5 million upwards to just over $3.5 million over that same period. But one thing worth noting is that the revenues have always exceeded the expenditures, which indicates that the program has been operating in a healthy fashion and has been very well organized and monitored. So essentially, there has been positive net income for the water and sewer program since at least 2016. That's a bit unusual for water and sewer programs, but most definitely is a very, very good quality to have. We can please move on to slide 6, please. Slide 6. I believe still slide 5 is up. There we go. Slide number 6. You can see basically a snapshot of the overall annual debt service for the water and sewer program for 2019 and also for this current fiscal year 2020. And if I may start off with the green blocks, you'll see that the green block on the back left totals $1,036,657. That was the overall debt service that was paid for previously issued debt for the water and sewer program. Of that $1,336,657, the majority of that was actually related to wastewater projects. If you look at that gray block on the left side, it was $701,809, and the remaining difference, $334,000 change in that blue block was the water-related projects. So this basically indicates that of all the debt service payments that were made back in 2019, approximately 3/4 or so of those were related to wastewater. And if you switch to the right side of this particular chart and look at those blocks for 2020, you'll see that even more so it is related toward wastewater type of debt than water debt. And again, this is the existing debt that the water and sewer program is paying for this current fiscal year. If we move on to slide number 7. Okay, on slide number 7, you will see basically information regarding the exact same debt that now you're looking at on an annual basis over the next 10 years. What we had previously looked at was just 2019 and 2020, but this is giving you a 10-year time frame as to what the overall debt for the water and sewer program will look like. And if you look at that gray line at the very tip top, that is the total debt service that's being paid for the next several years, and you will see that after fiscal year 2024, it drops considerably all the way down to about half of its current level by 2026. Now, because there are a couple of bank loans that will be paid off by then. You will also notice that the orange line and the blue line represent how much of that gray line is water and how much is sewer. So essentially the blue line plus the orange line equals the gray line. And you can see that again, the majority will still be sewer-related debt over the next 10 years, and actually all the water debt will be paid off by 2026. So for 2026 onward, all the water debt will be paid off, and approximately 1/2, or almost a little bit less than 1/2 of the sewer debt will be paid down as well. So that by the 2030, debt will be $486,605. Again, that's considerably less than what it is currently, which is approximately $1,050,870. So again, it's just worth noting there will be a lot more capacity available to the water and sewer program in approximately 5 years or so because of debt that is maturing. Please move to slide 8. Okay, on slide 8, this is basically giving you all a historical information about 2 different characteristics of the water and sewer program. One is simply the net income, and as I showed you in the first slide, the net income has been positive for at least the past 5 years. So if you look at this little blue section and how it's kind of staying stable from 2016 up through 2020, you can see that again, net income has remained in the black for each of those 5 years. So consequently, the unrestricted net assets are essentially the assets of not actually allocated to specific any needs, is actually growing, which is a healthy characteristic. from 2016 up to 2020. They were approximately $3.4 million back in 2016, and it is up to approximately $5.3 million for 2020. We can please move on to slide number 9. And some other ways of looking at the historical financial condition of the water and sewer fund is looking at a ratio called the operating ratio, and also looking at another ratio called the debt service coverage ratio. Now, this kind of briefly, the operating ratio is looking at operational type of revenues, for example, fees and rates and other revenues of that nature, but not including non-operating revenues, for example, like the sale of no truck or interest coming from bank accounts and things of that nature. You simply take the revenue that's coming from operating related sources and divide that by the expenditures, and you can see that that has been over 1.6 times the operating expenses back in 2016, and is now projected to be slightly over 1.8 times those expenditures by 2020, which is a very healthy level to be at. There's also a ratio called debt service coverage, and it's very briefly, it's basically how many times over the debt service expenses are being paid for by revenues, and that also has been healthy ever since 2016. If you can please move on to slide number 10. I'm sorry, slide number 11. One more slide. Now, this particular slide provides a little bit of insight on the overall 10-year capital improvements plan. So we're now looking into the future instead of looking at the past. The 10-year capital improvements plan has 25 different water and sewer projects proposed over the next 10 years, and the overall cost for financing all those projects is approximately $18,460,000. Now, as you can tell with these colored lines, the grand total of water and sewer being the gray line, blue being water, and orange being wastewater, you can see that there's quite a few projects actually planned in 2021, which explains why those lines are so high. And you can see that actually the majority of those are water-related projects, which explains why the blue line is so high in that particular year. However, in 22 through 25, it's much, much lower. And then there's another spike in 2026 for another capital project, water-related, that takes place in that particular year. And then in 26, it drops back down to a much lower level again. So the big point to remember in the CIP is that even though there are 25 different projects spread out over a 10-year period of time, the majority of the dollars are being spent in 2021 and 2026. Now, you can please move on to slide number 12. Now, this particular slide, this provides a listing of all those projects planned for just next year, for fiscal year 2021. Now, the grand total of those projects is $9,575,000, of which approximately $8,358,000 are related to water, and the remaining $1.2 million related to sewer. The largest of those projects, as you can see 4 lines down on the left side of this particular slide, is the phase 2 upgrade of the water treatment plant. That costs $8,247,000. Also significantly priced expensive projects are Sloan Street, Rolling Hills Drive, and the Crane Circle Lakeside Drive. Each of those expected to cost $515,000 each. Other projects, of course, of a lesser expense are also planned, but again, the grand total just for next fiscal year is just over $9.5 million. If we move on to slide number 13. Now, as we look over the next 10 years and just only focusing on water projects, this kind of gives you an idea of just water projects that are the more expensive ones. And of course, as I had hinted before, there's major expenses taking place in 21 and 26. Those being, as I mentioned, the water treatment plant upgrade phase 2, $8.247 million. And then out in 2026, if you look 4 rows down, there's the trunk line phase 1, which is going to be approximately $4,537,000. However, if you look at all the different water projects for the entire 10-year period, the total is approximately $15,044,000. Also, there's a need for some pump station equipment with $176,000, and the grand total water-related projects are $15,220,000. And it's worth noting that the needs over the next 10 years are much more heavily weighted toward water and sewer. If you can please move on to slide 14, you can kind of see what those sewer fees are. The sewer projects are not, of course, not as expensive as the water project. You still have notable projects including the Sloan Street, Rolling Hills, Crane Circle Lakeside, all taking place next year, as was mentioned before. There's also the Wilkie Street Sewer project of about $500,000 needed in about 3 years. And then there's a need for the Alville Street Sewer, a project in 2025. And lastly, East Main Street Sewer Rehab is needed in 2026. That's also $239,000 for that particular project. All those projects total approximately $3,240,000. Now, before I go any further, I'll take one brief moment and see if Nathaniel might wish to expand at all upon any of these project needs.
I think we can wait to the end. If we have any questions, you can keep going.
Okay, no problem. If you can please move on then to slide number 16. Question is, of course, how do folks in Franklin pay for these projects? And we are proposing that these projects are paid for by issuing new debt. As we looked at on the previous slides, there's some existing debt for the water and sewer fund, and a couple of those loans are going to actually mature in approximately 5 years, freeing up debt capacity for the water and sewer program. And we are proposing that there are 5 additional new debts that are issued over the next 10 years. We have assumed that large water project, phase 2 project, occurring next fiscal year, be paid for with a revolving loan at the amount of $8.247 million, which you can see indicated in green as the first of the 5 debt packages. We're also proposing some other projects bundled together for a $1,030,000 loan to be funded through traditional installment financing with a local bank. And then 3 more debts, one in 2022, one in 2024, and the final 5th one in 2026, also paid for with traditional bank financing. And then the remaining amounts, essentially, of that overall CIP, which costs about $18.46 million, we're essentially proposing that about $16,594,000 of that is funded by issuing debt, the remaining $1,866,000 being funded with annual capital outlay or the cash that's on hand for the program. Please move on to slide number 17. slide number 17 essentially combines the information that we saw regarding existing debt and also adds to that the information we have regarding the proposed new debt. And you can see from the blue section of each of these bars indicates the existing debt that is declining. The drop between about 2024 and 2026, again, that's because of those two bank loans y'all currently have that will be maturing. But you can also see how the gray bars are starting to build up as well, where new debt, the ones we had just mentioned on a previous slide, are being initiated and added to the program as the CIP needs are paid for. So as a result, if you look for 2019 on the far left-hand side of this particular table, you can see how the debt service is currently at just slightly over $1 billion. But by the time we get to 2022, the debt service for the water and sewer fund will be just a hair beneath $1.8 billion. And then over the next several years, it will hover around the $1.6 to $1.8 billion level there on out. Again, this is combining the existing debt with those 5 proposed new debts. And what we're looking at is actually the debt service payment. We're not looking at outstanding principal, but again, this is what the actual annual payment would be obligated by the water and sewer program. If you could please turn to slide 18. From what noting some of the assumptions that we have actually made in our analysis, and these are basically the primary points we made, but I'll go through each one of them just to give y'all an idea of what we have assumed. And number one is that we are not assuming any usage growth for water or sewer over the next 10 years. Considering the current COVID-19 circumstances, we thought it would be prudent to assume no growth at all with water and sewer usage. Also regarding the CIP, we assume any cost estimates made in this fiscal year are inflated by 3% each and every year for any particular projects proposed in the future. So for example, any project that's proposed a year from now will be inflated by 3%, and any project that's proposed 2 years from now will be inflated by slightly over 6%. So you have the compounding effect, so that we're considering inflation for any projects that occur in the future. We're also assuming that the Clyde Street Water Tank Project will increase O&M costs, which are operations and maintenance costs, by $10,000 each year. We're also noting that the water and sewer revenues are actually kind of slanted more toward water revenues. About 68% of the revenue coming in for the water and sewer program is related to water. The remaining 32% is related to sewer. We're assuming that dumping fees, dumping revenues received by the program will remain flat and do not increase over the next 10 years. However, we're also noting that expenditures on average, an annual average, would be going up by about 3% per year, except for salaries and benefits, which would be going up at about 3.5%. And it's worth noting that you kind of indicate from looking at the first assumption and this assumption regarding expenditures is that expenditures will be growing at a greater rate than revenues. We're assuming your all's revenues will be flat. However, we're assuming expenditures will increase. So that is what challenge that the water and sewer program faces. However, that's a challenge that pretty much all water and sewer programs do face. We're also assuming that that first debt for the phase 2 of the water project is going to be an SRF loan. However, the remaining debt is that indicated debts 2 through 5 would be traditional bank installment loans. We'd also assume that the program should have a fund balance above 100% of the budget for each of the next 10 years. And we'd also assume that the annual water and sewer rate increases, we'll note that have kept at about 3%, and that should stay at that level, so that's the historical increases. When we can please move to slide number 19. slide provides quite a bit of information, all kind of placed on one slide. But the first thing I want you to take a look at is that green line. And that green line represents the projected unrestricted net assets for the water and sewer program over the next 10 years. And we're assuming that will actually increase. You can kind of see that it does decline a little bit from about 2022 to about 2023, 2024, but it maintains for the most part an upward slope, which is a healthy characteristic to have. If you also look at the next blue line down, that's total revenues. We're assuming that those will be increasing, not because of usage growth, but because of rate increases. And it's also worth noting that red circle there, and that red circle indicates where the revenues, again showing as a light blue line, is coming slightly short of the expenditures. Each of those bars represents the annual expenditures for the program. And you will see that in 22 and 23, we anticipate there'll be a slight shortfall, but even with that slight shortfall, that green line, or the unrestricted net assets, will still be very healthy. So even with a slight net loss in those 2 years that we are projecting, that the overall health of the water and sewer fund will remain very good. The remaining colors within each of those bars kind of breaks out each annual expenditures into operating expenditures, which is the blue section, capital outlay, which is that orange section, and then existing debt, which is the gray section, and lastly, the yellow section or the gold section is the proposed new debt. So again, the entire bar is the entire summation of expenditures projected for each of the next 10 years. However, the colors kind of give you further detail on how that's broken out between operating costs, debt, and capital outlay. And again, it's worth noting that we are projecting y'all's revenues and unrestricted net assets to continue to be healthy and to continue to grow. Now, if you can please move on to slide 20. Another little ratio we like to look at is called the projected days cash on hand. And that basically is taking a particular calculation from your all's audit statement of net assets, basically indicating the unrestricted cash and cash equivalents that the fund has. And we are projecting what that level will be over the next 10 years. Currently, in 2020, if you look at that second green bar to the left-hand side, that is currently projected to be at slightly over 350 days. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that if revenues were to come to a complete halt, just theoretically, how long could the program continue to operate before it runs out of cash? And what that basically indicates is that cash on hand is enough for the program to last almost an entire year without new revenue before it runs out of cash. Now, we're showing that that will actually increase over the next 10 years, all the way up to 2030, but there will be a couple of little dips occurring around 2023 and another dip occurring around 2027. The reason for those dips is because of those two proposed new debt issuances. If you recall, we are proposing two significantly expensive water projects from y'all's CIP. And when those related debt service payments begin as a result of issuing that debt and paying for the project, the cash on hand will drop slightly to pay for that new higher loan payment. However, it still remains quite healthy. The least it gets is going to be at about 300 days, which is still quite healthy. But you'll see the dip in 23, and there's also a minor dip in 2027. But in the end, by 2030, you will still be at approximately 400 days of cash on hand. Now, if you can please go to slide number 22. One more slide. There we go. Well, the key elements of looking at the rates that are necessary to provide the revenue is basically, first of all, assuming that system revenues are sufficient to address both those short-term and long-term goals and financial requirements of the program. We want to generate a stable rate revenue stream. We prefer the rates to be fair and equitable, also easy to understand by customers, and lastly, easy to administer by the program. And if you can please move on to slide 23, we'll actually take a look at y'all's water rates. In this particular slide, you can see essentially the water side of your all's water and sewer rates, and you'll see that there is a residential water charge, and there's also a commercial water charge. And if you look at basically the water residential inside rates, you can see that the minimum charge for 3/4 inch meter provides 1,000 gallons of usage. And that particular charge right now is $18.55. If folks have larger meter sizes, for example, like a 2-inch meter, there's 18,000 gallons that's allocated or paid for by that respective charge. So say, for example, if you go slightly down to the 2-inch meter, that fixed charge is $172.10. And lastly, if a particular customer has a 6-inch meter, they're allocated 30,000 gallons. That particular charge right now is $393.15. There's also a volume charge that does not vary, of course, by meter size, but it just basically applies to any usage above the usage assigned to that meter. So let's say, for example, if you have a 3/4 inch meter and you use 2,000 gallons, you pay the $18.55 plus your second 1,000 gallons, you pay $3.25. Now, if you look at the particular table, of course, for the 2020 column, that is the rates that are being charged right now. We are proposing those rates overall increase by 3% per year. And what you can see is essentially what these rates will look like all the way out through 2025. And that shows both the water residential inside and also those commercial rates and both the volume charges for those folks. You can please move on to slide number 24. Now, the sewer rates are a little bit simpler than the water rates. Basically, they're simply a base charge with no flow allocation to it. So regardless of the meter size, the base charge is the same, but you look at the volume charge, and that applies to basically any flow starting from 0 on up. And again, you can see if you look under current 2020, those are the rates that sewer users currently pay. For example, residential, $870 is the base charge, $430 per thousand is the volume charge. On the commercial side, $935 for the base charge, $440 also for the volume charge. You can see with a 3% increase for the first 5 to the next 10 years, you can kind of see how those rates will increase through that 5th year. Now, you please move on to slide 25. Question that obviously pops up is, well, what would my monthly charge look like with that 3% increase? And as an example, we have about actually 6 different examples of what those fees would be. And if you look at the very first one, here's an example of a residential inside 4,000 gallon user. This is combined both water and sewer. It was currently $64.60. And over the next 5 years, of the next 10 years, up to 5 years, that would increase up to about $64.30. So that's essentially a 3% increase per year. And of course, with the folks with more usage or folks that are outside, they would have higher charges than a residential user with less flow. And we can please move on to slide 26. Another question that arises is, well, if that's what the charges are going to do or currently are for the folks here at Franklin, what are they in other areas? Either areas that are near us or areas that are further away but somewhat similar to us. Essentially benchmarking the rates just to see where Franklin falls in amongst its peers. And if you look at the left-hand side of this slide, you can kind of see how Franklin compares to other folks if you were to use a residential inside user using 3,000 gallons a month. If you look at that, you'll see that Canton, for example, have some of the lowest overall fees. That's primarily because of their special sewer arrangement up that way. But as you kind of see, as you work your way down through some neighboring areas, Franklin is sort of kind of in the middle or sort of a little bit less than what you kind of see as an average because, the charges overall for water and sewer range from $22.50 up in Canton all the way out to $78.14, and now all of it not too far from that over in Clay County, a little over $73. So if you look at Franklin compared to other peers, it's quite similar to Tuwassa, not too much higher than Marion, but still kind of on the lower, a little bit lower than the average when you look at 3,000 gallons. Now we can move over to the right side of this particular table. You can kind of see it's still the case if you're looking at 4,000 gallons. So if you look at a residential user with additional 1,000 gallons usage, it's now $54.60 for Franklin, but again, Canton, of course, in a special situation in sewer, they're very low at $28.32 for a monthly charge, but still, now all of it is still pretty high up there, $92.81. So Robbinsville up there in Hills and Brevard, they're still pretty high too, up to get over $80. So the overall big picture is that Franklin's charges currently right now are not too far out of the ordinary, really when compared to other peers. They're actually kind of slightly on the lower end compared to other folks. So you can kind of see we're showing a number of connections. They're also comparative purposes and also looking at the service population. So if you wish to kind of look at that particular attribute, kind of see how Franklin falls and compares to those other folks. So with that being said, you just move on to slide number 27, and walk conclude to simply commend the town for undertaking this type of planning project. I recall this a few years ago we had done this project, so it's good to come back to Franklin and kind of take a look at all the figures and see how y'all have been growing and how your needs have been changed, and always good to watch y'all maintain your facilities and infrastructure because it's always good quality to see taking place with a water and sewer provider. With that being said, I guess you can move on to the final slide, and I would now like to open up the floor to any questions.
Anybody got any questions?
I do.
Okay.
We'll go backwards, if that's okay. Some of the 3% changes from 2020 to 2025 were already proposed, weren't they? Or did our 3% supposed to fall off in 2020?
It was actually the current, Stephen, real quick, the current CIP plan that we were under that the town council adopted in 2015, it was actually 5%. And that was scheduled to stop this year. So it's actually a lower percent of the 3%. Does that answer your question?
That does
Part
answer
of
my
it, okay.
question. Yeah, we're going backwards here. The water treatment plant upgrade phase 2, that's down from our last estimate. Our last estimate was really scary, and I think we talked a little bit about not doing that next year. Is that possible, or do we want to go ahead and do it next year? Questions kind of anybody?
It's council's decision.
I mean, what does it involve and how necessary is it? Is it a can we can kick down the road, or do we need to do it right now?
So with that, I'm going to defer to Mr. Moore, because I know that's a project he completed with phase 1. So if you want to describe the necessity of phase 2.
Yeah, so as me and the council were here, phase 1, you had been through it. Phase 2 really builds on, because those projects are several years in the undertaking. So a lot of these other projects that are proposed in here are the building blocks, and that's kind of our foundation of where we want to be at, how we want to start to be able to provide service for the city for the next, the original ones lasted over 40 years now. And a lot of those renovations over the last 40 years have not been done. That plant is an aging plant. So we definitely want to be able to, keep our backbone of water sewer up to date and keep it moving forward for phase 2. I mean, phase 1, everything was implemented for phasing this in for phase 2.
Okay.
And one thing to note, if I may, in the presentation, if you'll look, and I don't remember the exact percentage, but over 60, when you split water and sewer revenue, over 68% of your revenue is coming from your water alone. So it is it's a high user for the town of Franklin for revenue as well.
My next question is, what is the trunk line phase 1?
So that's a project that was identified in the original CIP plan. That is when the water plant was built. That is the main water line from Industrial Park to supply water into town. So that's a huge undertaking project, and that was split up into 2 phases and put off just because that project was such a large endeavor. That was put off into the end of the CIP plan, so that goes back to if you wanted to do the water plant construction this upcoming year, hopefully by the time that construction was begin to be done or completed, that's where that large trunk line would come into play where we could get it completed.
It's a replacement of the existing trunk line?
Yep. That was installed when that plant was built. Luckily, we have not had any problem out of it, but that is extremely, if something were to happen, it basically shuts water down to town.
And where does it go? Along the highway or?
Currently, it goes out Old 64 on the Old Murphy Road. And that is an old AC line. So that's why those projects are in there. They're at the end of their lifespan, basically.
Would we replace it where it is currently, or would we take it down the highway, or?
That's something we've looked at for some alternative routing issues. Like I said, this is kind of just the, mile scope of what we can do and how we can do it. When we get into those projects, that's where we can look at alternatives of, could we go down the 4-lane? Do we have alternative routes to go?
So we're investing in Coggins J Creek. There's nothing in our budget for any alternative water sources.
Do you want to discuss some of the options we've been looking at? So Withers Ravenel has been looking at some alternatives for us, and part of what is in the CIP plan is hopefully maybe at least a solution to a secondary water source if we were to have an issue.
Yeah, so we attended a webinar for a company that has the ability, if something were to happen, to come in and set a temporary source up for us if we had to do that. Where we make a phone call, they come in, they basically bring trucks in, tractor trailers, and set up filters, clarifiers, presses, that we have options of where we can draw water from. So looking at where we're at right now, if something were to happen on the Coggins J Creek side, you would want to look at the Coweeta side to be able to get, if you had a pollution issue, say. The other side of that, kind of in the beginning, we looked at with that old trunk line in there, there might be a possibility to use it as a secondary water source, keep that in, relocate the new one at that point, and have a backup system in place that we could use through some valving and a little bit of planning ahead on that.
Yeah, because there's a pipe already going from there to town. It's not that far to get to the Coweeta.
Yeah. Use our existing infrastructure that we have to supplement what we have later on.
And that way water would just go to our existing plant. It just be from a river 6 miles away.
Yeah, I apologize to start off with. I couldn't read that very well, and I don't have one of those screens in front of me, so I may have not heard it. He may have mentioned some of the things I asked. If it's okay, just overlook me and see me after the meeting and bring me up to date. But I just had a few questions, and I'm not sure we can answer them at all, but the total cost on the 10-year CIP plan for water and sewers is in excess of 15 million, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Total?
Yes,
Over
sir.
15 million. And that would be paid for by revenue bonds
It's an option.
Yep.
and general bonds, general obligation bonds?
As part of, there's a
So
couple,
we're assuming that the CIP is funded with a revolving loan and then installment loans through banks.
Or revolving loan fund? Is that through the state or local or
a mixture
Yes,
of
yes,
both.
mixture of both? Do we have a, I know when it comes to just general finances for local governments, the local government commission has an income to debt ratio. Do we have anything like that for water and sewer enterprise funds, income to debt ratio?
Actually, if you look at the, one of the debt ratios that we showed previously, I'll go back to that particular slide.
What slide is that, Stephen? I can bring it up.
So you go slide number 9. You can see a debt service coverage ratio, which basically kind of shows the same information in a slightly different manner. You kind of see how the debt service coverage ratio is currently at approximately 1.5.
Okay. Thanks.
Again, on slide number 9.
Okay. So in order to do these financings that we're talking about for the revenue bonds or the revolving loan fund and so forth, we're going to have to get authorization from local government commission before we issue that debt.
The amounts you would, yeah, they would surplus them.
Yeah, the LGC will require authorization for each of those 5 debts.
Have we talked to anybody at LGC about this project yet? No? Do we have all these projects, I know how they were listed in terms of years and so forth, but do we have them in priority order, like this is the most important thing that we need to do right away, on down the line to the least important? But do we have those set up in that priority to say this is the most critical thing we need to work on first?
Mr. Moore's worked on that,
Yeah.
so that's part of the in-depth view we've got on another sheet, but if you want to talk about that real quick, 'cause that's a good question.
Yeah, so let me pull up one of these. So looking at water projects. So 2021, 2022, of course, the water treatment plant, phase 2. But the other side of that is looking at a lot of the development on the east side of town. So on the water side, that was this council was gracious enough to acquire the property at our tank location. So looking at that, upgrading to put a new tank in there to have our storage capacity, and to the service line for that east side of town. So with the development we've had in the past year and people wanting to develop that side of town, that's how we prioritize those projects to provide water service. And it's the same side on the sewer service side. So everything, that east side of the bridge goes to a pump station, and that is the Sloan Street, Rolling Hills Drive, and Crane Circle and Lakeside Drive are projects that are paramount to the hospital, the new Ingalls development, and some developments we're having on that side of town. Scenic Ridge being a huge one that looks like it will start very soon. So we need to work on the infrastructure on that side of town to start upgrading.
Right now, our fund balance in the water and sewer fund is in pretty good shape,
It's very healthy.
right? And of course, we may have to use some of that, but I guess what we'll have to end up doing is once we pick out the priorities, then we'll have to go for probably 2 or 3 bites of the apple as far as financing goes.
And you'll see that in your budget proposal tonight.
Okay.
Yes, Barbara.
Is the COVID-19 situation causing any impact on our water, sewer?
It is, unfortunately, and that's described in the budget message tonight, but I know financing, we've pulled the latest reports, and just in the month alone, if you compare your revenue of water and sewer pre-COVID-19 versus current, you're down 40% in revenue. And that's really just the month. That's not looking at this current month where we're now in kind of the really crucial part of COVID.
I also have a question about the assumption that there's going to be zero growth. I've been hearing a lot of speculation lately that people in cities are starting to want to move out of cities, something like they did back in the 70s when people were leaving cities. If that happens, we're not going to have zero growth. We might have quite amazing growth. So,
The one thing we have to remember, though, growth is very expensive.
well, I know, but I'm just saying
I
if
know.
people move here, then
That's a very valid point. And we have to factor in that as you grow, you're going to have expenses to meet that growth.
And that's a great point, Ms. McRae. One thing to look at is this plan, the consultants presented us two options. One was a 0% growth rate, looking at 3%. That's the option we chose with when we go into budget. You'll see that's the suggestion just based on what we're facing this upcoming year. However, council should keep in mind the second to that is you can adjust your growth rate and your rates each year. So if we were to start to see growth in the upcoming years, you could base on the consultant's second option, which is projecting a 0.05 growth rate, and that would only be a 2.5 increase. So that's something to consider, that you could look at fluctuating it year for year, but for budget purposes this year and what you'll see in your budget proposal, we just want to go the safe route and project a 0%.
that's good.
Any further questions? Okay. I guess that'll wrap up the CIP plan for tonight. Unless somebody's got some additional questions. You want to?
And Mr. Mayor and Council, if I
Yes.
may, I know this is a lot to digest. And again, apologize for, it's no fault at all the consultants. It's just the timing did not fare well in anyone's favor with COVID-19 restrictions. But it's up to council tonight. This is a lot of information to digest. You're welcome to review it, take it up for, adoption at your June meeting for your CIP plan. That'll give you a month to look at it, and feel free to reach out to me or Mr. Moore and ask questions. The one thing, just wanted to get this before you tonight, so when you do see your budget message, you can see why that 3%'s in there. So,
One last question. The 3% increase, we're expecting it to now drop off at 2025.
yes.
In our water and sewer condition after 2025 or 2030, for the foreseeable future, we should have some stability in our rates.
Yeah, so a lot of these projects are big projects proposed in here. Every year we have smaller projects that we take care of some of the other issues we have. But these big projects are something that we have seen that needs to be addressed, that needs for growth to happen in Franklin. We need to look at options of funding those.
But, I mean, in-town residents or out-of-town residents that get water and sewer, I mean, they should expect, after we choke down this substantial debt and rate increases over the next 5 years, to maybe have a respite of increases after that, because our water and sewer should be in tip-top shape for at least a decade or two.
That's a good projection. And one thing, the councils in the past several years have really been very forward-thinking in trying to account for growth and, some of the wear and tear that's on our infrastructure. You have to think really in the last 6 years, and if you look at this into the next 10 years, all that the town council will be accomplishing through this, where you'll basically have almost a brand new water treatment plant. A few years ago, you invested in basically redoing your whole sewer plant. So you're building infrastructure for the next 20, 50, and 30 years, which had been neglected before.
But there are a lot of variables that we don't know yet, like Robert brought up. We don't know what the population is going to be. We don't know what the demand is going to be. Priorities may have to change before we get through the 5 years. So there are still unknown variables out there we'll have to deal with as they come up.
In theory, as we grow, the money from growth should help fund the programs as well.
In theory.
In theory, is exactly right.
And that uses up the inventory.
And I'll just build on what Mr. Gordon said. 5 years ago, we'd have never thought that the east side of town, we would have a new hospital. 100 thing development started from Scenic Ridge. All that development, you can't look in your crystal ball and see where those projects are going to be, and that's why, looking and trying to develop these to get in front of before a developer comes in here and we don't have the allocation to give them. That's the things that we want to get ahead of so we are ready for those things to happen.
I think they did a good job with the information they had at hand to try to project what we need and how we're gonna get there. You gotta have a plan. It's like Nathaniel was saying, if somebody comes in here and says, I wanna open up a business, or I wanna do this, that, and the other, and you say, what? And they say, well, what do you need? We say, what do you need? They say, I need water and sewer. How much you need? I need X. So we don't have a plan to serve that to you. So we need to have a plan, a long-term plan. 5 years is about as far as you can go out on something like this. I don't, if you project more than 5 years, I think you're probably not gonna be very accurate on that, but if it's in 5 years, probably more like 3 to 5 years, you're probably pretty good. But I can tell there's a lot of work that's been put into this, and I appreciate the consultants putting on this, and I appreciate the staff working with them and bringing this up, because we need to be looking forward. And I agree with Joe. We need to keep in our back pocket the possibility that there may be another water supply out there that we need to look at instead of not looking at it.
Okay, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, I know that most of us, you and Joe probably back during that time when all this went into all the planning, but there was a great deal of planning that went into this
Absolutely.
years ago. And so I think as we move forward, we need to be in consideration of all the planning that was done by the town board and trying to get that going back at that time.
Okay, anything else? If not, let's move on, if that's all right.
Jessica, Stephen, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you, Freddie.
Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on. You want to take a real quick break?
Yeah.
Okay, I got a couple of nods on that, yeah. 5 minutes. I know none of y'all have anywhere to go out of town or anything like that, so. I'm getting
You get over
hungry.
65 and you're a man, you have to make bathroom breaks more often than you did when you were 25.
Look, you're a kid.
I was gonna say, your chair worked decades on that, yeah.
I got you about 15 years.
One time.
See, I was that age, I'm older than that.
Well, you said 65. You said 65.
I said when you get past 60.
Oh, I misunderstood. I can't hear good.
I can't either, that's why I have these earrings.
Oh, I'll set my timer going here.
We're gonna need a snack machine in this place. If this COVID keeps up. Me too, I'm missing
What if we
a
got some stale potato chips?
That was an awfully good picture you took of me.
I thought it was a real good picture. Yeah, I sure did. You can use it any way you want to. It's yours.
I appreciate that. That
If
was
you need a
really-
JPEG on it on a flash drive or something, let me know.
Thank you.
Came out good. The one I really
It's not
wanted
as
though.
pretty as my bird, but.
Yeah, the one that I really wanted was where you had the camera kind of like this, but it focused on a tree instead. Oh, Lord, I have more trouble with focusing, and the older I get, the more trouble I have with it.
What's up, Nathaniel?
I was trying to take a picture today of a spider that was the size, I swear, of a peppercorn.
Doing all
I
right.
took about 15 with a macro lens. I got one shot.
What do you
Are you
think?
still
That's what
gonna
counts.
build those houses, you think?
Now, I think you don't have to worry about, what is it, a killer bee or
I know,
something?
it's-
Wasp or something.
Killer
They were
hornets.
like, I saw some great macro shots of it.
Did you see that guy?
Horrible looking
Did
face.
you see that guy that let himself get stung?
No.
It was on the news tonight. They showed the hornet, you know, it's like this big.
Yes.
Well, he's some kind of an explorer, adventurer or something, and he let himself be stung, and they had a video of it, and it was like he'd been shot. I mean, he fell down. He was not faking it either. He said it was the most painful thing he'd ever had.
Really?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Obviously, he's never been shot with a stun gun or whatever they call it, taser.
Well, I think this probably was just about as bad.
I don't know, if it isn't one thing to worry about,
They
it's something
killed
all the
people
time.
even in Japan.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's just me, I've been about to freeze back
It's cold in
here.
there. My
It
hands
is
are
a little cool. I mean, I'm not.
I checked with my thermometer, and she said she was okay.
Well, it's because I was doing this.
Some of you really got any stale potato chips?
There's also crackers.
I thought this was gonna be a little quicker than this.
I'm just used to short meetings.
I didn't
know that.
Yeah, I saw one.
We have to speed this up along.
Yeah.
Don't tell you.
Do that many presentations.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Once a month.
My wife had to go through this.
Gotta get on to Perry Mason. Watch Perry every night.
They got to hers before.
8 to 9.
Even worse than what it was, so.
We've seen most of them, but we don't remember.
She's doing her for 94.
Maybe one little part will come along and you'll go, yeah.
Yeah, we saw that one.
Do all the stuff I want to do. They just said, well, Mom, she's 94. She said, think about it, how many people you know that are 94?
Oh, yeah.
Went bad, Ed Henson, Lord,
Some guy came up from the lake church and everyone
Back up with it.
Okay.
So,
She doesn't know.
I called her and she said, text me about
She
it.
said, well, I guess you're right.
Okay. And I said, I'm getting ready to email you back.
Oh, it was very good.
All right, so I don't need to.
I don't know if anybody remembers
I was
that.
out there on the scene on
Get
that
up
one.
together.
I was out
Exactly,
there.
because you work
Yeah,
on
me
the
too.
behind the scenes. That's
I don't know
fine.
where they are.
We couldn't do anything about it tonight anyway.
I got some guy from Columbia.
Faces sideways.
I couldn't remember how they got it out. I know they were talking about flying a part in, but it would take a 747, the thing weighed a ton or something.
This was the guy though who just handed you which valve.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why we didn't know that. I never have figured that one out, but we did.
Well, somebody knew it, but whoever that somebody was retired and took it with them probably.
I'll show you. Find one on here. Yeah, let me find one here. Okay, let's take this one here for example.
But then we'll,
Okay, so I'll need to look at that.
you've been having closings outside?
No. Sometimes they stay in the car.
Yeah.
I've got a waiting room which is
Doesn't
kind of
do anything
isolated
good.
from the rest of the.
You know, usually it has, on the one
During
I'm
this
used
whole
to,
thing,
it
we
has
have
like
had the
top
prettiest,
view.
longest
You get view,
spring
you
I can
rotate
remember.
it,
The weather's been
expand
Do we have any
fantastic.
media
I don't
up
see
there?
that on here unless I'm missing it
I wonder if we have
Oh,
any media.
No, I've never seen golf
Weird,
course
so
footage,
when I
they
just
just
When I
check
came
it,
back, it's just
Absolutely.
Bobby.
zooms
It's
in.
been
But now
We
you
buried
know, I mean, that's 10
12
minutes
dogs
to
down in the
spare.
woods
This is.
blow our house
on there,
yesterday.
But I don't see
And
any
Ward
direct
said,
zone.
I ain't ever seen the woods. This is lush.
I've just never seen so many flower
Or they
trees.
rotate
Yeah,
clockwise.
we didn't get a frost after budding. I think that helped a lot.
Oh, yeah, that won't do it.
Okay,
Yeah,
guys,
that'll work.
let's go back, get everybody, our 5 minutes is up.
Barbara's in the restroom.
Oh, Barbara, okay, still missing Barbara.
She'll get up to speed. Yeah, Ward commented yesterday, he said, it's just lush and green, I've never seen this.
Franklin?
Just, yeah, basically.
So I read somebody said something, I hadn't been out there, but usually I always played it until the greens just went to pot,
Well,
usually.
what he was talking about, we buried, I think, our 12th dog down in the woods below our house. And we were down there yesterday evening, Ward looked around and says, I don't ever remember it being this
Oh,
hard.
really?
You know, it just been so much water and so much, whatever, yeah.
They're talking about freeze when Friday night? and thunderstorms today, but I don't know if it's happened.
It's
I'm sorry.
later.
The ball
Is
season.
it?
Yeah,
It is,
I caught part of the
unfortunately.
weather and it's
That's too
supposed to be
bad.
possible.
Disappointing, isn't it?
Yeah, I walk out of here.
I think
Yeah,
it's
see,
like,
they qualified for
We got a
the,
long way to go yet.
they qualified for the
I hope
regional
not to be what
championships
they
in
do in the weather.
Congress Center, so. it's-
Yep,
That's
Yeah,
really a
it's
shame.
let's move on.
Yeah, this is.
I think we're ready to go, so we can get out of here before
Next
midnight. Okay, presentation on town Franklin sidewalk comp plan. Mr. Setzer, sir.
All right.
Great job.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. Yeah, tonight, I want to present a plan I've been working on for, since last summer. If you remember last budget season, the council was presented with a couple sidewalk items to be working on. Well, with that, we kind of expanded this and to develop this plan and develop the sidewalk capital improvement plan and condition survey. This is also a plan that was recommended back in 2016 when we adopted the Bike Walk Franklin plan as a tool to use for upgrading existing sidewalks. So tonight I wanted to go through the plan and look for, adoption or guidance from the council after. So this plan, it was developed, of course the objective of it is to identify all the sidewalk structure that the town of Franklin has inside the city limits, with identifying their length, their width, the condition of it, rank them, and map them out, and have a database that Public Works and the streets crew can go by, and the town manager's office when budgeting for upgrading these. So on your screen, you should see, I'll go through the background and then the objectives. Of course, is what I just went through, was developing a ranking system, inventorying the town sidewalks, of course, mapping all the sidewalks using ArcGIS, and then took on the task of physically walking and measuring all the sidewalks and photographing them, while noting the conditions and the widths, and then also inventorying the approach and endpoint of the sidewalks for ADA compliance. Then inventorying the curb ramps for ADA compliance as well, which is also another item that the town would need to work for as a transition plan for ADA compliance. And then finally, develop the whole plan together and have a comprehensive sidewalk plan of existing sidewalks as a tool for future development. So I broke it down into 2 phases to get started. So the first phase was, of course, inventorying the sidewalks with the GIS maps, and then once we identified all the sidewalks, then we was able to go out and start mapping them, walking them, measuring them, and so on. You can see here, this is an aerial photo showing an sidewalks after it was mapped, where we show the different gradings of the sidewalks and where it is. That's along Harrison Avenue. Then also we would identify categories, define some of the hazards that you would find whenever somebody be walking on their sidewalks. And then actually define them. So tow trips, sunken places in the sidewalks, spalling, which is, since when the top layer of the concrete is coming off, you lose that smooth texture of the sidewalk, and you're starting to see more like the rock, the base in the sidewalk. And then of course obstructions, that's anything from plants, mailboxes, trees, bushes, anything like that is an obstruction to the sidewalk, trying to maintain that 5-foot clearance that we're trying to achieve with the sidewalks. Of course, cracking, and then cross sloping, which is generally a sidewalk, could be the sidewalk sinking, or it could be.
And they're off. Out of the gate, it's coronavirus. Follow closely behind me.
I'll turn it off there. I had it on off.
Cross slopes would be your driveway cuts. And then, of course, ponding and cleanliness is another one that we're addressing.
Sorry, Bob. I'm sorry.
Oh, please, go right ahead, sir. We're all interested.
No,
You gave us a laugh, so.
Not that we needed it.
you have to turn it off. You think it's off?
It's supposed to be.
Supposed to be.
Somebody really wants to get more than you do over the ticker line.
What is it?
All right, so then the next part broke down into 3 categories was curb ramps. Curb ramps at your intersections. They're broke down into ADA compliant ramps with the detectable domes. Your detectable domes are at the intersection, the little metal dome pad that you see. That's the whole intention of that is for somebody that's visually impaired. They feel that and they know they're at an intersection. And then we have ramps that there is a ramp, but there is no detectable dome, so you've got some ADA compliance. And then, of course, no ramp at all. That's just a straight curb or a going off the sidewalk, and there's no ADA compliance whatsoever. And I've got pictures of showing the different ones around. These are all around town. Then next was developing a ranking system. And I've looked through a lot of different surveys, and a lot of them, the planning organization or the town or the county or whoever, the state, they come up with this real difficult like matrix of points you award for curbs and tow trip areas and trying to grade stuff between different rankings. And I thought I was trying to just keep it real simple, and we just broke it down into 3 areas: good, fair, and poor. And I'll go through what each definition is. A good sidewalk is a sidewalk classified as good as at least 5 foot wide and without any major defects. Now, a good sidewalk could have, a crack in it, but it's not going to be any major tow trip hazard. It's going to affect your any issues while somebody was out walking. And then a fair sidewalk classified as fair might have some defects, but not multiple defects within a section. A 4-foot sidewalk or smaller would automatically qualify for fair designation. And then I go back to 2018, the town council adopted new standards in the UDO that all new sidewalks must be 5-foot standard as recommended in the Bike Walk Franklin plan. And I know that standard's got some variations where we could say this, if it was not, if you couldn't, it had pass and passing zones and all that. I didn't want to get in all that in the plan, but and then of course a poor sidewalk is a sidewalk with major defects in a section. A sidewalk with multiple non-ADA compliant hazards would qualify as poor. And then time frames. Obviously, if a sidewalk is ranked as good, there's really no immediate need to do any upgrades to a good sidewalk, other than just basic maintenance, edging, keeping brush clean back, that kind of stuff. A fair sidewalk, estimated in the next 5 to 10 years that it would potentially need to be upgraded. It's just something you'd have to keep an eye on. And then a poor sidewalk is a sidewalk that is your highest priority, your most, if John was here, he would say those would be the ones you're most liable for if somebody was having a trip or a fall on. And they should be scheduled to be replaced as soon as possible. Then material costs. So when coming up with material costs, me and Nathaniel, we got a contract, an approved contract from DOT for one that was in Macon County, and this was included what this contractor, their bid costs were for a sidewalk, and broke down and used this was a contractor that is a local contractor as well. So we used their bid costs to base all of our figures on moving forward. And when I get into the actual, you start seeing each individual section, those are the figures we go by, whether if it's needing a new curb, if it's needing sidewalk, if it's needing an ADA ramp. Because we decided it's best to show what it would be at the max number, but then it potentially could be less, which I'll get into a little bit further. But you can see that, so this approved project from DOT, which I think was a 2019 project, curb and gutter replacement, they estimated $30 per linear foot. A 5-foot wide sidewalk replacement, $25 per linear foot. And then, of course, the removal of old sidewalk, $15. That's, of course, your landfill fees and haul and fuel. And then one ADA ramp, which one would have the 8 detectable dome, is $2,200 a piece.
Justin, what's the standard depth that you pour a sidewalk? How many inches is normally? You look, is it like 4 or 6 or?
I'd have to refer back to Nathaniel, but I think it's at least 3 to 4 inches. They just poured one on Porter Street, which I'll go into more in a minute.
Well, yards measured at 4 inches thick.
Yeah, so that's probably what there's probably, so it's 4 inches, I would assume.
Okay.
Then next is a map, which there's another map later that's blown up. And then I broke down into section 4, which is the next 50 plus pages, is each individual section of sidewalk showing its name, its ranking, and a description about it with a cost estimate on every section. And you can see where, like this first one's Bidwell Street. And it was broken into 3 sections. It was ranked as fair. It's got sections, it varies in width. It's 5 foot in one section. Some sections it's 4 foot 6 inches, and then it's back to 5 and back to 4/8. So it varies in width. So you're getting a lot of, and then you also can, and it gives you a description, like you've got cracks, you've got some spalling, different sections on there. I want to fast forward a little bit. I'm going to go up to Porter Street, which is one that Public Works has been working on for the past couple of months down by Lazy Hiker. There it is. So Porter Street is one that Public Works is just right now finishing up, and you can see and it's 300 feet. It was recommended. It was ranked poor. This is one we planned for in the current budget we're in last year during the budget process. And at using our matrix for the cost analysis at 300 feet, a 5-foot sidewalk, which was a 4-foot sidewalk before, we estimated to be $21,000. And I said, all these prices in the book are if we had to hire a contractor, because sometimes we might get into that, and we needed to know, the higher end, not shoot low. Nathaniel told me that they were able to upgrade that sidewalk from 4 feet, add an ADA ramp at the top, and do the sidewalk all the way down, get to a 5-foot sidewalk with new curb for $6,000. So you can see the price difference from our Public Works crew doing it in-house to hiring a contractor. So, but I wanted the price for a contractor if we get into some where there's some of these that are going to be way more detailed and need more work with retaining walls and so on, potentially, depending on the project. So, and then I'm going to fast forward to the end. And at the end of the plan, this is also, I have there's another large map. It's a 11 by 17 map that you can see on the map. You can see all the sidewalks and all the ADA ramps and they're scored. So with a legend, if it's so the blue circle, the little circles, the red, the green, and the blue circles are your ADA ramps at the intersections. And we stuck with just intersections. The only place that we did not, we kind of went from that is around the current hospital, because you just got a lot of traffic around there. But we didn't go with driveway cuts with ADA ramps and stuff, we're just stuck in with intersections. And you can see where the detectable the ADA compliant ones are, the semi-ADA compliant ones, which would be the green, and then the red ones are the ones that are not ADA compliant at all. And then the blue sidewalks are your ones that are ranked good, the ones that are green are fair, and then the orange are the poor. And then the last slide, which I know you're probably not going to be able to see this in here without zooming in, but this is a breakdown of every single project with its width, its the width, the length, the name, what is needed to upgrade it, its ranking. And then if you'll notice the yellow, some of them have got some yellow highlighted in it. Those are kind of quick fix items that are streets crew potentially. These are things that just need to be trees cut, mailboxes potentially moved that we might need to talk to the post office about. Edging, just cleanness, dirt, maybe it's coming down, and just some quick fix items that could help with that. And then of course you've got the ranking, the length, how many curb ramps are needed, and the total cost. So if we upgraded every one at the contractor rate, you would be looking at, this is not including good, this is just fair and poor, you would be looking at a little over 2.8 million to upgrade all these sidewalks. But you've already seen that in-house that our public works crew, we cut one from 21,000 to 6,000, so you potentially can get this, cut this in, more than half, potentially, in upgrading the sidewalks. And these aren't, so these are not to be all done next year. This is just a tool to use and pick which ones we need to work on. So Barbara reviewed this. This was kind of her last that she did as being the sidewalk liaison before we made the changes. And we got her stamp of approval. And
Absolutely, and I'd like to say that I'm blown away by what he did. I mean, I think it is just fantastic. It's a great tool, and it's easy to use, and it was. I enjoyed going through it. Went through the whole thing. So I commend you.
Appreciate
You did
it.
a great job.
Joe?
How many, do you have an opinion, once we get up to a reasonable amount of training, up to speed, on pouring sidewalk, how many linear feet a year we could look to do in-house? Has that been thought about?
Well, I'm just want to go off what we've done this year. Since pretty much since we've hired Chris, we've done Porter Street, which is 300 feet. They've done down by C's, which I could probably go to it right quick, but I'm saying that was probably 100 foot. It's not very far. And then they did another short section somewhere else. Where?
Iowa Street.
Iowa Street. So they did Iowa Street.
That was before Chris.
Before Chris, but you've got 400 feet with Chris just in the last
2 months.
2 months,
Wow.
3 months. So I can see, I don't want to throw a number out and say you can do 1,000 feet a year, but
It's just how much we want to invest.
yeah.
Several thousand would be pretty doable, though.
It's just how much we're willing to invest.
And this all can be paid through the PAL bill fund, because it's sidewalk maintenance and upgrading.
How much is PAL bill? PAL don't cover all this, does it? Son?
No, your PAL bill, even in your appropriated fund balance of PAL bill, is right at around $450,000. Annually, you get around $125,000 in PAL bill, and keep in mind some of that is spent for street paving as well.
But it don't cover our manpower, does it?
No, it just covers your
Mud,
materials.
Materials?
Yeah. Which I didn't count any of the manpower in it because the guys are working every day.
So that $6,000 figure didn't cover manpower?
No, that is just
Material?
material. Which, if you hire a contractor, you're gonna be paying for manpower, you're gonna be paying for material. That's why the price is, so much higher.
Yeah.
But your power bill is based on gas tax revenue, isn't it?
Yes.
And
Street
not that a lot of people using a lot of gas, so that's gonna take a hit.
Yes, David?
I'm impressed with this. I think it's phenomenal. I don't want to task you with a bigger job, but is it a possibility, or at what point do we start to look to somebody that doesn't have a sidewalk that's in a high usage area? I mean, where do we squeeze them in? Do we get everything done that's even fair on this before we even start thinking about laying new sidewalk in an area of high pedestrian traffic?
Well, a lot of those is gonna be based on DOT projects. And if it's on town street, obviously, then it's something that we want to do, that's something we would have to take on. And then that comes back to, referring back to our Bike Walk Franklin plan, because there's a lot of sidewalk projects in it. And that's why I did not dive into any new sidewalks, because we did that in 16 with that plan. I just wanted to stick with upgrading our infrastructure now and trying to get it up, because there's some, if you saw that first picture back on that tow trip hazard, that was on Bidwell Street. That one that was showing like 3-inch with the ruler, that was on Bidwell Street. So I mean, there's places that are needing fixed.
Highly trafficked.
No, I agree 100%. Like we've already done some of these. Old ones are done. They're
Yeah,
off the list.
I know at least 3 in here that are done.
But I guess I'm just asking, at what point do we look beyond? I mean, because in my opinion, a 3-foot sidewalk, even though it may rank fair, if it doesn't have tripping hazards, that's a better sidewalk than somebody that's living on a high traffic street that has no sidewalk.
Well, and I want to throw in, there's some fair sidewalks in here that we might not ever change. Depot Street extension is ranked fair, and it's 10 years old because when they did it, somehow the contractor messed up and made it flush with the road. It's only 4 foot wide. So with my definition, couldn't give it a pass. I made it fair. So you got one like that, that's probably going to really make the price go up, because that's probably going to be if I went to it, it's probably going to be a $200,000 project because you've got 1,200 feet of sidewalk.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I would say that's a good sidewalk, that it'd behoove us to lay sidewalk, serving residents that don't have a sidewalk.
Yeah, it's 2,500 feet of sidewalk from where it's from the cancer center to Riverview Street.
It'd just be the will of the board at that any given time where to put the money.
I mean, I guess, how do we go about laying a sidewalk where it's never been done before? We have to see if we have the right of way to do it?
Yeah, we'd have to make sure we've got some right of way and get into, going through all that, and you get into potentially having to buy easements if you don't have it, or right of way. And
that would be difficult.
Yeah. And none of that was considered, obviously, in this. That will run the price of a project up a lot.
Any further questions? Anything else you have, sir?
Only thing I can think of is this, well, hopefully whenever we get to doing a ADA transition plan, a lot of our meat can be reverted back to this. If when we get to one of those, we can just hit the high notes, our public facilities, town hall, public parks and stuff, and then refer to this on that as well, so.
Okay, anything else? Excellent.
It's impressive. Yeah,
Well
it's hard
done.
work.
Good job.
Well done. Okay.
Do we need
So it'll be at the will of the board tonight. Again, it's if the board would like to move forward with adoption of the proposed CIP plan that you saw tonight, or if you feel more comfortable waiting till your June meeting and review it further. But certainly at your discretion if you'd like to approve what Mr. Setzer's worked on tonight, and from administration, he's went above and beyond. He took this project kind of on his own and ran with it, and I know each week for the past year he goes out and he's walked every sidewalk, so that is a very commendable effort. But it's certainly the will of the board if you want to adopt it tonight, or if you're more comfortable waiting to your June meeting.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to adopt it.
I second. Don.
Okay.
I'm certainly not gonna argue with you, that's for sure.
I'd like to just modify it to allow for planning for future sidewalks. I mean, I don't want to change this because it's a phenomenal plan. I think it behooves us as a town to think about the people that don't have sidewalks and put some sort of wiggle room for implementing them in the future, or some sort of a plan to start that sidewalk service to people who have paid taxes for 30 to 40 years. I don't know how to add that, but I'd like to see it in there before adoption.
I don't think we would ever tie the hands of any future board should that project come along at that time, which until the new sidewalk and it was doable, it would just be the will of the board at that time, whether it was an exact part of this project or not. So I don't think you're losing anything by adopting what he has, but that's just my opinion.
I just want somebody to pull this off the shelf and say, well, we can't do sidewalks until, this says you've got to get through the
Well,
fairness.
I don't interpret it that way, but I just might be me.
Well, do we have, to follow up on what David's question is, do we have a plan or a format or a requirement to put a sidewalk in an unserved area? Does it have to meet certain criteria, or is it just,
Generally, it
squeaks
comes
allowed
from
inside?
Residents who band together and want, like if they want us to pave a road or something. Jim Williamson always said you have to have the 30 feet wide of easement for curb and gutters and stuff. And it usually comes to the board as a request, and we go out and see whether the easements are readily available, whether it's, can be done, and look at it. And it might be in connection with a new project that the developer is putting in.
I know in some cases, if somebody's gonna put a housing development in, and some towns have requirements that if you're gonna put a housing development in, or a development over here for residential, then you need to add sidewalks, and the sidewalks have gotta meet the town standards and so forth before we'll give you a permit to proceed with the project. I don't know if do we have any criteria that we use?
Yeah.
We do, and
adopted
Mr.
it.
Setzer, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, we've got standards that's in our UDO, our zoning ordinance,
Okay.
that's what we updated about a year and a half ago. And originally it was just must have a 4-foot sidewalk, and we changed it to must be 5 foot unless you can't get 5 foot for physical reasons or barriers, and then you need to have 5 foot where you can with passing zones, and you could go back to 4. Places where you can't get right away, maybe there's a bank or something. So yeah, we do have standards on sidewalk width.
Well, there are a lot of places in town that need sidewalks that don't have them, David, that you know of.
Baird Cove Road, Palmer Drive's pretty heavily pedestrian traffic. That's one I see every day, but I'm certain that there's others that would probably rank above that even. But I think they're underserved, and the bike walk plan, maybe we could reference that in this too, in adopting this. I mean, it connects a lot too, and you've worked a lot to connect them on that bike walk plan. I just don't want to tie our hands behind our back to where we're not laying new sidewalk in the relatively near future.
Yeah, and the bike walk plan, that's its main goal, is for new bicycle and sidewalks. It was all new. It wasn't any upgrading existing or anything. It referenced it. That's why, it references to create this plan for existing. But you've got that's laying the groundwork for new sidewalks. Plus you've got the county's comprehensive transportation plan, which we're in the middle of upgrading right now, and there's multiple bike and sidewalk projects in it as well. So you're getting, I don't know if Baird Cove's in it, but you've got multiple areas where you're seeing it more. Some of them are state road, some of them are town streets. You have there's over 40-something projects in the bike walk plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent plan also.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Banker?
What would Mr. Henning have to say about it? It's what I was wondering, if this is, know, his opinion about adopting it if there were.
Okay.
Hey there.
Hey, John, quick question, Miss Mash.
I'm with you.
Okay, perfect.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think that, you know, and of course this is always what I'm going to harp on is because of liability concerns with sidewalks that are extraordinary for municipalities in North Carolina. You have liability for the use of them, and when folks are injured on them, there's no easy way to avoid liability for it. So I think it is vitally important for that reason, and for lots of others that are related to keeping what you have in good shape, to focus on maintenance and upgrade of sidewalks. But I take David's point, and I think that in part we've tried to do that with the UDO. We've got a very big opportunity coming up as we adopt the new chapter on zoning, and we're going to have to re-adopt large sections of the UDO to look at how to maybe foster development of sidewalks in underserved places. And I think that probably that's a place to the comp plan, the revised UDO are places to look at unifying the bike walk plan and this plan to say, you know, these are both focuses of development for the town of Franklin. So I don't think I understand what you mean, David, that in sort of practical terms you might find yourself saying, well, we can't install something new as long as we've got this list of things that are priorities. But I think you can do both, and I think you have to do both. So, you know, I would commend, and again, I don't think that you're going to turn your back on opportunities that come along to install new sidewalk by adopting this. So I do recommend you're going to need something like this sooner rather than later.
John?
Yes.
It's Mike. Basically what you're saying is if God forbid something happens, we need to be showing that we had some sort of plan, that we were at least looking to try to address some of these problems, correct?
Yes, and I mean, you got to get actually where the walkers meet the sidewalk, so to speak. You can't have sections of sidewalk that are dangerous to passersby, and ranking them and prioritizing the ones, and that's what this this examination does, is figures out the ones that are dangerous to folks potentially on the sidewalk. So I think that's, to focus there and rank things and figure out where your liabilities are is crucial.
Okay. Of course, the other side of that is if we identify them and don't do anything to them, then...
Yeah.
Well, that's true. You better follow through and do something about them. But that's true whether you have the plan or not.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Joe, you had a motion.
I'll renew my motion to adopt the plan.
Okay, and there's a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay.
One quick note before I finish. The plan is on the town's website under the planning department's page. It can be viewed and downloaded there if anybody wants to look at it.
Good. Thank you, Justin. Well done. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Council, if I may, John, I'm going to go ahead and just let you stay on because the next couple items, if you're okay with that, so I'm going to smash it if you don't care.
That's just fine.
Okay, Mayor, you ready? John, you ready there? Okay, Madam Manager, you want to speak to this proposal from Making New Beginnings?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
This is for information, there's no motion on it.
Mr. Mayor and Council, last month received a request from Mr. Bob Bork with Making New Beginnings. This is in your agenda packet. It's for discussion purposes only. Mr. Bork did reach out to me today and said that he would be available by telephone if we needed to contact him. But it's certainly up to the board if you want to discuss it tonight or if you want to take it under advisement, and hopefully by your June meeting be able to have Mr. Bork and other members of the public here. But just wanted to reiterate that this is from Mr. Bork. So.
Okay, I believe this had to do with some homeless, questions of homeless.
Yes, sir.
And I told y'all I would go out and see if I could find out something else, and I have not had much success of defining the homeless situation that we've got right now. If it's all right with the board, let's hold off on this till the
Can I ask a
meeting.
question?
Yes, ma'am, please.
When you spoke with him on the telephone, did he say if he'd gotten anywhere about getting members for this task force yet?
We've not been able to connect. It's been via
Okay.
voicemail back and forth, so.
Okay, I was just curious
Yeah.
if we were holding up.
That's why I think a good presentation, if we could wait till June to see what all he's gathered, I think that's better in person. But great question.
Okay, if that's a consensus of the board, let's just hold off until June. And we'll bring it back up. Okay, Madam Manager, I think you're going to give us some notebooks and what have you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor and Council, the fun part, what you're going to be given tonight is the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. It details your revenues and expenditures, and Mr. Talent is providing that side. Real quick, the news media, I know Mr. Setzer will be taking up copies to distribute to them since they're upstairs. Also, Mr. Angel will have the proposed budget that you have tonight on our website by around 9:00 p.m. tonight, so the public can view it. There'll also be hard copies available for public pickup in the town hall lobby if they desire as well. So what we're asking tonight is just a couple items. The first is just a motion to acknowledge that you've been presented acknowledgement of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget.
Okay, let's take that first and see if there's any further. Somebody want to make a motion that we have received the budget? Have a motion? Have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, we've received it.
Thank you. And then the second part to this, if we can schedule a budget work session for Tuesday, May the 12th at 5:30 p.m. here in the Town Hall boardroom. We had initially proposed this same date in your budget schedule that we adopted in February. So if we could set that, that'll be the time where we do a deep dive into the budget, and also give you a few weeks to review that if you have any questions as well. And certainly I'd like to thank all the department heads. They have really spent a lot of time and hours into researching what their departments need, providing proper quotes, and really trying to take the needs of the town in a progressive manner and move forward while still maintaining revenues and expenditures in an appropriate balance. So really would like to thank the department heads and our finance department as well. There's a lot of hours that have went into that budget, and it's a team effort that's allowed it to be created. So.
Okay, and I'd like to point out, and including myself, that it'll be at 5:30. Okay?
What date?
Well,
That's immaterial. It'll be at 5:30.
Is that next
Yeah,
Monday?
May the 12th, 5:30 p.m.
It's Tuesday.
So I'll call for the motion to set that. If that's is everybody okay with that?
That's next
Okay.
Tuesday, right?
Is what?
That's next Tuesday?
Yes, May the 12th, 5:30.
So moved.
Okay, so we have that. All right, second. All in favor? Okay, Madam Manager, we have that set
you.
there.
And then the last item of business, just for council's acknowledgement and also for the public, in your consent agenda, we went ahead and when you approved your consent agenda, that moved forward with setting your budget hearing for June the 1st at 6:10 p.m. So you've already done that. I just wanted to make a note of that we did move forward with setting the budget hearing.
Okay. And there's one other thing we added it to the agenda was Ms. Mashburn wanted to mention something about picking on the square.
Yes, I was just thinking, normally we would be starting picking on the square this month, and since we don't have another meeting, I mean, I don't know where that falls into on the stages of reopening, but just kind of to see what we thought might be happening.
Yeah. I don't know either. I would say right now, yes, ma'am.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Just like to tell Mayor and Council, I have been in contact with Mr. Clay, and kind of the preliminary plan him and I discussed, and just want to make sure Council is okay with this. Again, of course, it'll be based on the phasing. But what Mr. Clay has done is he's working on a press release that basically just states, picking on the square will follow all COVID-19 restrictions and will progress as COVID-19 moves forward. We are scheduled for our first one Memorial Day weekend. It's kind of in the air and it'll depend on the phasing if we'll be able to have that or not. What Mr. Clay and I talked about is regardless if we get to have it Memorial Day weekend or July 4th, he's already scheduled all the bands. So whatever band was scheduled to play July 4th, they would play July 4th. He's not going to try and catch up, which I think is a great idea. So we do have a schedule, and just any guidance from council would be, appreciative as well.
And Mr. Mayor, this next item that we have under legal for discussion of the phased reopening, that is really kind of a good segue into it because
yes, sir.
We'll review kind of the state of declarations and orders that we are in right now. So if that's okay with everybody, I'll just launch right into that. Mr. Mayor and Town Council, this is on here as a discussion item in part because the declaring and repealing of states of emergency for the town of Franklin is under Chapter 34 of your ordinances left to the mayor's discretion by and large. There is a provision by which the council can order the mayor to undo a state of emergency. But where we are at this point is that, and let me just run through a brief history of the orders that we have had. The first was Executive Order 116 on March 10th, in which the governor declared a state of emergency, but did not. That was mostly a threshold sort of a thing. It did not have a whole lot of orders for average people in their average lives and what they had to do about it. The town and county followed through on states of emergency declaration on March 17th. And then with the first sort of applicable to individuals order that we had was March 26th, in which both the county and the town acted to prohibit short-term rentals, that would be less than 28 days, and mass gatherings of more than 10. I think at that point we did have an order of from the governor that gatherings of more than 100 were prohibited. So then the next day, Executive Order 121, which is the stay-at-home order, came into place and said, except for essential activities, everybody's ordered to stay home. And gatherings of more than 10 in a single room or space were prohibited. When you did go travel, you were supposed to for essential activities, supposed to observe the social distancing guidelines. And crucially, one thing I want to point out is that while we had prohibited short-term rentals during that declared state of emergency, the governor's order actually makes hotels and motels an essential activity to the extent used for lodging or carrying out food services. So I think that that's pretty comprehensive. So where we are now is that now we have Executive Order 135 from the governor that says 121, the stay-at-home order is still in place. It's going to stay in effect until 5 p.m. on May 8th. The county acted the other day on April 29th to repeal its emergency declaration as of 5 p.m. on May 8th. So it's to get into lockstep with the governor's order. And that, I believe, Mr. Mayor, you tell me if I'm wrong, but is your intent, and I'm drafting for you a repeal of the town of Franklin's declaration to put us on the same page as the county in terms of the local order. And again, the only difference is we had prohibited short-term rentals, essentially. Are there any questions about that? Do we feel the need to have discussion about that yet? And then I'll talk a little bit about what the phased reopening the governor's proposed looks like to me.
I think, John, that what we want to emphasize to the public, you're not going to see any vast changes on May the 8th. What you'll be seeing is whatever the governor comes up with on announcing his phase one, which he has said he will either give some details tomorrow or Wednesday about. But right now, I think that all the local folks are kind of in the dark as to what will happen Tuesday or Wednesday.
That's quite right, and I think that will remain the case. We're not going to really know until the governor tells us where he and the council of state and everybody advising him thinks we are in terms of the time to recover, so and to reopen. So we will make it very clear in your order you'll file tomorrow, Mr. Mayor, that and the county did this as well, which I appreciated, that the governor's, we're not trying to defy any governor's order. It's it all stays in place as he has ordered everything to be uniform across the state. And so what he has done, and this gets to Dinah's question a little bit about where we are and where we're headed, is it says as of May 8th, we believe we can begin a careful phased reopening, and phase one still leaves the stay home order in place. It just opens up the places that are, if proper social distancing and masks and so forth are all being observed, it would widen the sort of guidelines as to what's open. And only after 2 or 3 more weeks, and it's a little vague like that, do you get to phase two. I think that they'll have some better metrics for us about what they're looking for in terms of a plateau or decline in the number of cases. But at phase two, it opens up a little bit further. And after 2 or 3 more weeks after that, phase three, that then urges only the most vulnerable people to stay home and really tries to make a much fuller recovery and openness at that point. So I don't think we're going to know for several more weeks when you could have a gathering like Picking on the Square and not run afoul of where we are with the governor's order.
I will say too that every Tuesday morning, the county, all of the health department, all the services gather together, police, fire, the towns, Highlands and Franklin, every Tuesday morning, and I keep trying to keep y'all in the loop of what's going on. Right now, there has not been a whole lot of change. I think we still have the 3 cases that we have had. I heard nothing new today. Here's where I think we're running into problems. Some of the rural counties are not really experiencing any problems from COVID-19 to any extent, whereas your density of population metropolitan areas are. And so we have a little bit of the urban-rural divide here as to where we're going with this. And frankly, from what I've heard, the manager and human resources, Travis and myself, we have not missed a single one of these briefings from the governor. And I just really, I don't want the public to get the hopes that on May the 8th, everything's going to open wide up. I don't see that. I mean, I have to be very frank about it. I think you'll see everything stay in place. I do think one of the things that you might see is opening up some of the short-term rental situations. Beyond that, I don't see anything happening much on May the 8th. Any comments from the board? John, you think we pretty well cover that?
I think we did, yes, sir. But happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
We will have no additional restrictions other than what the state of North Carolina.
We can make stronger restrictions. We cannot weaken.
But we won't have anything stronger than what.
I don't have anything on the horizon. No, I really don't.
So we'll be as open as we can be within the state regulations. And
I will affirm again that I will keep this council as in the loop as much as is possible. The thing of it is I don't have a whole lot that I can keep in the loop about. I will say that the governor today, I was very pleased to see the bipartisan briefing that we had today with the governor. It was very heartening to see that everybody's on board with taking this thing serious.
And David, that's an accurate statement to say, as of the repeal of our emergency declaration proclamation, we will be with the restrictions the governor's put in place and nothing more restrictive. The mayor will retain the authority to put something more in place if it becomes necessary, though. And like he said, we're all going to make an effort to keep the entire council in the loop about that.
Absolutely. If I do anything, you're gonna know about it first. I can't, unless it's a dire emergency that comes up, but I don't foresee that happening again. Any comments from the council? Yes, ma'am.
Knocking on wood.
Oh, okay. All right, John, I think that pretty well clarifies that situation. Do we need any kind of a motion tonight about the reopening?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, let's move on along. We have I'll call for a motion to go into a closed section under GS 143-318.11A6 to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or condition of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, Mr. Setzer, sir?